It's no fun when our kids are sick, but we may just have found the silver lining. Apple and raspberry and orange flavoured electrolyte slushies made by Rehydrate.
Rehydrate slushies are a tasty way to get essential electrolytes into our little ones when they're dehydrated from sickness or even just the Aussie heat. They're delicious and they'll help your little ones feel better in no time. Grab Rehydrate from Coles today.
This is the Happy Families podcast. Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Justin Coulson, and this is the podcast that's dedicated to making your family happier. So let me ask you a quick question. Are you a person who gets caught up in the pursuit of perfection? You want perfectly behaved kids, a perfectly tidy house, and a perfectly responsive spouse? Maybe you're the kind of person who gets critical, wants everything to be right, and when it's not right, you get a little bit annoyed, a little bit frustrated, and say a few things that aren't necessarily helpful. Or perhaps maybe you just find that the challenges of life get you down. Well, the answer to these and a range of other problems that we face in family life may be gratitude. Whether it's the kids getting whiny, the kids saying that they hate their siblings, they hate their teacher, they hate their friends, they hate that you won't give them what they want when they want it. Well, the answer to all of these issues may be gratitude. Today's podcast is about gratitude. I'll tell you why it matters and how it can help in just a minute.
Have you been wanting to attend one of Dr. Justin Coulson's parenting workshops, but so far your schedules simply haven't aligned? Then let him come to you. You can have one of Australia's most respected parenting experts in your lounge room. Learn how to build a strong connection with your children, how to really understand them, and how to discipline them in ways that teach and that everyone can feel good about. Plus, you'll have all of your parenting questions answered without even leaving your lounge room. Organise some friends and enjoy an intimate, thought-provoking, fun evening in with a parenting expert in your lounge room. Visit happyfamilies.com.au/lounge room for more information, or email kylie@happyfamilies.com.au.
For several years in our family, we have spent time during our evening meal discussing gratitude. I'll start off the conversation normally by saying to one of the children, "So, what were you grateful for today? Tell us about it." Now, every now and again, I'm a bit preoccupied, I'm too tired, or I'm stressed, or dealing with other things, or perhaps I'm just not in the gratitude sort of frame of mind. And one of the children invariably will dive in. "Well, Dad hasn't said it, it's my turn." And so usually our 5-year-old or our 6-year-old or one of the younger kids will say to one of their siblings, "So, what were you grateful for today?" And they'll start the conversation off. Gratitude is one of our family's principles. We've decided that our family is a grateful family. And so gratitude gets a lot of airtime at our place. Let me tell you a little bit about why. A 2008 study of 221 children compared the life satisfaction and school outlook that 6th and 7th graders had. They were randomly assigned to one of 3 different conditions. They were assigned to list 5 things that they were grateful for every day, or 5 daily hassles, or just 5 things that happened during the day. And they made their lists for 2 weeks. Well, what were the results? The grateful group ended up showing that they were much more satisfied with life, and they were significantly more positive in their school outlook. Gratitude seemed to be related to much better outcomes in life for these kids in grade 6 and 7. A 2010 study of over 1,000 students found that high levels of gratitude were related to high academic achievement. Also, high levels of gratitude were related to reduced depression symptoms, less envy, and higher levels of positivity. In fact, since the late 1990s, there have been dozens of studies, and they've demonstrated pretty clearly that gratitude makes us, and it makes our kids, much happier. It makes us more satisfied with life. It makes us better off in our relationships. Gratitude is actually also related to being healthier. People who are grateful are more likely to exercise, believe it or not, and they're also more productive and they do better at school and at work. So, gratitude seems to lead to better life outcomes and more happiness. But is it that gratitude is giving us better things in life, or is it that people who are happy and successful are more grateful? And that includes children, by the way. Well, the answer is both. It's actually a relationship that works both ways. People who are grateful are happier, and people who are happier are more grateful. It's really hard when you think about it to be grateful and also feel miserable. They can't occupy the same space. You can't be sad and feeling like the world is on your shoulders and also feel tremendously grateful for all that you have. And it's also really hard to be genuinely happy without feeling good about what it is that makes you happy. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, "The secret to happiness is not having what you want, but in wanting what you have." Now, there are a few things that get in the way of us being grateful, and researchers have tried to uncover what it is that gets in the way of gratitude. And the answer is, at least in part, entitlement and materialism. So when I'm talking about entitlement, I'm talking about that entitlement mentality where we just think we deserve things. We don't say thank you. We don't appreciate what we have because we think that we were entitled to it anyway. It's kind of like when we look around our home and we see the furniture that we have, and we don't feel glad that we have a table that we can sit at and have our evening meal because, well, we deserve that. I paid for it. I deserve it. Why should I be grateful for it? Somebody who has high levels of gratitude is much more likely to say, I'm so grateful that I have the work that allows me to have purchased this table, or I'm so grateful for the kindness of the parents of my wife or my husband who helped us to purchase this really, really wonderful piece of furniture, or whatever it might be that's given it to us. Entitlement means I deserve it. I'm not grateful for it. It should have always been mine anyway. And materialism, well, materialism is when we're focused heavily on just having lots of things. And it seems that the more materialistic we are, the more we want things, the less grateful we are for the things that we have. And the effects of both materialism and ingratitude are really important. Let me tell you about one study just quickly. Some teenagers who were surveyed who believed that success and happiness comes from buying and owning things. That is, they were more materialistic. Those materialistic teens were found to end up with lower school results, lower GPAs, more depression, and a more negative outlook on life. They also had lower quality relationships. Their relationships were poorer. Ouch, just from being a little bit more materialistic, feeling a little bit more entitled. So, if we want to grow gratitude and stamp out ingratitude in our home, what are we supposed to do? There are a lot of different ways that we can promote gratitude. Here are a handful of ideas to get you started. First of all, the best thing that we can do is to model gratitude. It's really as simple as monkey see, monkey do. Now, I'm not calling your kids monkeys. I'm just saying when they see what you do, they will mirror it. If you're not grateful, if you're not expressing gratitude, if you're not saying thank you to the people around you, maybe even your children themselves, they're not going to say thank you either. So look for opportunities to say thank you. Be an example. And may I also suggest, pay particular attention to what your children do that you appreciate and tell them. Don't say good girl or you're super, you're a star or any of that sort of stuff. Great job. Instead, describe what they've done and how it made you feel. In fact, there's quite a bit of research that tells us pretty clearly that when we're praising our children, it doesn't seem to have a particularly positive effect. In fact, it can regularly be quite negative. And I might do a podcast on the perils of praise in the next few weeks. But instead of praising your kids, express appreciation. Say thank you. You might say something like, wow, you've tidied your room. It's so much cleaner now. When you tidy up your bedroom, it means that there's less work for me and it's more time for fun. So thank you. Or we might say, when you do that, it means that I can trust you. I'm really grateful that I can trust you. What matters most is that our kids feel our appreciation and they see us modeling that appreciation with other people. Maybe we're just saying thank you to the person who served us in a store, or maybe we're saying thank you to the person that let us in on the road. But gratitude and modeling gratitude is really, really important. And every time that you want to be critical, just take a step back. Instead of being critical, find something to be grateful for instead. Maybe the kids come in late from their play date with their friends out in the street. Instead of being angry at them, perhaps you can say, I'm so glad that you kids are safe. I was getting worried. And then once everybody's calm, you can talk about setting limits a little bit later on. Okay, so that's the first thing. Model it. The second idea is this. grateful things. Now, I've already talked about how my family does this grateful things conversation every single evening. And like I said, the kids love it so much, they get into it so much that if I don't start it off, they'll actually take over and they'll make it happen. And sometimes the things that we hear about that the children are grateful for are pretty mundane. They're pretty obvious kinds of things, like what we did that day that was fun. But here's the great thing. Those obvious things are things that we can easily take for granted. But the children, because we're so focused on gratitude, they are noticing them and they are grateful for them. They're also grateful for little things like somebody smiling or hugging them or something else that went unnoticed for the rest of us. They say thank you and we all say, wow, that is right. These good things happened. One of my favourite stories about gratitude comes from one of my parenting coaching clients. These clients decided that they were going to adopt this grateful things idea in their home, and on the second or third night that they were asking their children what they were grateful for that day, one of the children paused. It was their 5-year-old, I think, and she responded, "The thing I'm most grateful for today is right now." I think that this is a really powerful reminder that it's about spending time with our kids. It's about focusing on the good things that we have in life. And when we do that, we simply have better moments with our families. A third idea, in our family a couple of years ago, we did something really fun. My wife Kylie created a bunch of labels, gratitude labels, and one night we all sat down and we wrote down a whole lot of things that we were grateful for on these labels, and then we went and tied them to a tree outside our front door. We called it our gratitude tree. Every time we walked past that tree, we were reminded by looking at the tree of all the things that we had to be grateful for. Sometimes we'd pause and read it, but most of the time just walking past and seeing all those labels that we'd written on reminded us that there were dozens, if not hundreds of things that we could be grateful for. And we regularly sat down and wrote out another handful of things and went and tied them on the tree. The kids thought it was a great idea, and it was a terrific reminder of everything we had to be thankful for. You could also try this for an idea. Carry a rock in your pocket, a gratitude rock, and every time you touch that rock, you can quickly remind yourself of all that you're grateful for. Or every time you touch the rock, tell the kids, I just touched the gratitude rock. Quick, tell me something you're grateful for right now. One other idea that I think is really useful. Most of the studies that I've talked about have used a gratitude diary to have people record what they're grateful for, and those people have been followed over time to see whether or not they're happier or not, and usually they are. There's research that says that we only need to do this once a week. There's other research that says that we should do 3 grateful things a day, and there's research that tells us that there's probably other options and other ways of doing it somewhere in between that. I think what really matters out of all of this research is that people are different, but expressing gratitude has positive effects. Whether you choose to do it every single day, whether you choose to do it once a week, maybe on a Sunday night before you kick off the new week, to wrap up the old week, taking time to write things down in a gratitude diary makes a difference. It makes people feel secure, it makes people feel happy, it makes them feel loved, and it makes them feel grateful. So let me wrap up this little segment here with one more quick story. Recently, I spent time with an absolutely exhausted wife and mother. She was tired of her kids driving her mad. She was sick of a husband that she felt didn't meet his obligations to her. And while she wouldn't admit it, I got the sense that she was pretty angry at herself and the decisions that she'd made in creating her life to this point. She almost had this sense of resentment for herself. If only I hadn't done this. If only I hadn't done that. Well, I listened to her frustrations, and after we talked for a while, I thought, I'm going to try gratitude with this mum. So I invited her to do something that was a little bit hard. I said, would you please tell me one thing, just one thing about each of your children that you're grateful for? And she had a handful of kids, so she had to think. And these kids were driving her crazy, so she had to think pretty hard. Once she'd done that, I asked her to tell me 3 things about her husband that she appreciated, that she was grateful for. Now, she began this activity really resentfully. She did not want to do it because she did not feel grateful. She felt mad, and she felt resentful, and she felt underappreciated or unappreciated. She just felt angry. But within a few minutes, something really interesting happened. As we talked, her mood changed. The atmosphere became lighter. She began to get a little bit moist in her eyes as she began to count her blessings one by one. and she named those people that she loved, and she talked about the way they made her grateful. Gratitude quite literally transformed the way that this mum saw her world, if only for a moment. But gratitude actually created a shift in her heart, in her soul. There was something different. So next time you're stressed, next time you're completely over it, next time you're ready to scream, take 5 minutes and try gratitude. Get it into your heart. I think that you'll be grateful that you did. So let me wrap up this segment with a quick question. I would love to know, and I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening would like to know as well, what do you do to promote gratitude in your family? Or, if you're not doing a whole lot right now to promote gratitude in your family, what do you want to do now that you've had a listen to this podcast? Leave your answer at happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/2, as in the number 2, and I'll be right back with some answers to your questions.
We all love our children, but sometimes they can make life challenging, and we're all searching for the right answers. In the end, all we want is happy children and happy families. Dr. Justin Coulson is one of Australia's most respected parenting voices. His seminars equipped and empowered thousands of parents to make their families happier. But sometimes getting to a parenting seminar can be tough. Now you can watch one of Dr. Justin's seminars from the comfort of your own home and at a time that works for you.
In this seminar video, available online now, you're invited to sit in on one of Dr. Justin's parenting seminars as he takes you from confusion to clarity, combining parenting research with heartfelt stories. You'll discover the 3 essential keys to raising a resilient child and creating a happy family. What your child needs from you. From Dr. Justin Coulson at happyfamilies.com.au. Download this 90-minute seminar now or purchase the DVD at happyfamilies.com.au.
So each week during this podcast, I'm going to be doing what I can to answer your parenting questions. If you're dealing with issues with the kids or if you're dealing with issues in your parenting, just go to happyfamilies.com.au/questions and leave me a voicemail. Let me know briefly what your question is, and I'll answer 2 or 3 of them every single week in my podcast. A quick disclaimer here as well about the advice that I'm giving. The advice is general. It's not a therapy session. It's just an idea generator. Even if I'm answering your question, you're not in front of me. You're not giving me all of your info here and now. So my answers are really best guesses based on the information that I've gotten from you in your voice message or your email. And because the answers need to be fairly brief, and I can't get into heavy detail because you're not here, I can't be perfectly specific. So once again, quick disclaimer, the advice given here is general. Now, let's start us off with this week's first question, which came via an email from Leah. And Leah asked this. Hi, Justin. My son has been uninvolved in extracurricular activities, and there's always an underlying pressure to have him involved in some kind of ball sport. But today, at school, he's in grade 2, which I'm guessing means he's about 8 or 9 years old. He was excluded because one boy said he was crap at soccer. He's naturally sporty. He thrives on being active and developing his body. I also feel like there are other skills I'd like him to develop, and he can't do everything. Developing our talents is important, but extracurricular activities should not rule our family life, and I can't stand the idea of racing from one thing to the next all week. Does every boy do ball sport? Does every boy do it while they're also developing other talents? So, Leah, this is my response to you, and again, just a general response. First of all, research tells us that children will generally do better with sport or music or another interest. They do well when they're involved in these kinds of activities because it stimulates their physicality. It can also stimulate their brain. It can be good for their social aspects. There are a load of benefits. It can build a sense of competence. It's really good for them to be involved in some sort of extracurricular activity. But the activity should be based on their strengths, not based on their gender. Just because he's a boy doesn't mean that he should be playing ball sports. I know of some boys who do gymnastics or who do some sort of have some sort of musical involvement. Obviously, when he's getting this kind of input from his friends that he's lousy at ball sports, that's going to hurt. And there are a lot of advantages for him to develop his coordination and his physical abilities by playing. But does he have to do ball sports? Well, no. I just think that if you've got the resources to do it, that it would be good to have him involved in something. Now, let me add something else really quickly here. Personally, I'm not a fan of competitive sports, particularly for children. I want my children to master things. I want them to learn things. I want them to become capable and competent with things. But competition focuses less on process and learning and more on winning. So I'm personally more inclined to send my kids into activities that are less competitive. It might be something like indoor rock climbing or swimming or surfing or hiking, maybe some other outdoor pursuits that are physical but are less competitive. Or maybe they're competitive sports but there's not a lot of emphasis on the competition. The other great thing about a lot of these things is you don't have to ferry kids from one activity to the next and then stand on the sideline and watch the disappointment on their faces when they lose. Okay, my second point is this. Only 8 years old. He can't do everything. So I'm inclined to suggest find what he enjoys and do that. It may be that you might try 3 or 4 different things before you work out what he enjoys. In our family, we've spent a lot of time and, unfortunately, a lot of money on our children chopping and changing. However, we've agreed that that's quite okay because we don't want to make them persist in something that they don't love. And because we've allowed them to chop and change, they've each found things that they do love. They've found things that they look forward to and that they can't wait to be involved in. And to us, that's much better than fighting with them because we've spent money on it and they've got to do it now. What I do recommend, though, is if you have spent money on it and they're in a team or you've paid till the end of term, that you do encourage them to get to the end of that point. Now, the last quick point that I would mention here, Leah, in response to your question, the time factor. Well, this is the unfortunate side effect of having children in extracurricular activities. It takes time, and sometimes it takes away from family time. I guess this is one of those personal questions where you need to balance your desire for your children to develop their strengths and talents with your desire for family time, and hopefully find a balance that feels right for you. Seeing them play, seeing them develop and seeing them learn can be a wonderful way to actually have time together as a family. And once they get good at something, it might actually mean that you can go down to the park with them later on or down to the beach with them later on and be involved in that activity with them in family time because they've developed the skill outside of family time. Okay, the second question came in anonymously. That came in via my Ask Dr. Justin page, which is online at kidspot.com.au. And this one's a bit of a tough one, and it's dealing with that chestnut sleep. This person wrote, I have 3 kids. The oldest and youngest are easygoing. They'll easily sleep at night if the middle one doesn't wake them. The middle one, well, she's a totally different kettle of fish altogether. Some nights she'll wake once, other nights 32 times. She's now 2 years and 2 months and she hasn't changed. She's being trialled right now in a toddler bed in a room with her older brother to see if that makes a difference. Well, it hasn't. Previously, she was in a cot sharing a room with her younger sister. She wakes up and comes into my bed. Then she's restless and grizzly for 20 minutes. Then she goes back to her bed where she's restless and sooky in between brief 1-hour sleep sessions. Then back to my bed and the cycle begins again. I've tried routine coaxing. I've tried rewards. I've tried talking happy, talking cranky, talking stern, letting her cry, etc., etc., etc. Most people are saying just let her cry. Well, that usually ends with the rest of the people in the house awake and me cleaning vomit off something, so that option is out. She won't even go and get into bed at night time. She falls asleep on the couch. If I try and put her into bed, she screams and screams and the cycle begins early. She has a strict routine, bedtime at 7 p.m. Friday nights. Bedtime at 7 p.m. Friday nights. I'm a little more lenient. It might be 7:30 till 8 p.m. I just don't know what to do anymore. I'm on 2 years of sleep deprivation. It's taking its toll on me, my emotional health, my relationship with my husband, and recently I think I'm starting to develop depression. Don't worry, I'm already booked in to see the doctor, this person says, but I don't know what to do anymore. I'm typing this post at 2 a.m. while she lays in my bed and I'm sitting here shivering cold because there's no room in the bed for me, so I'm off to sleep on the couch again. Wow. Well, here's my response. First off, it's good that you're getting help. That's really important. If you're dealing with anything related to depression, you do need to get help. But it also sounds like much of this is sleep-related, and studies tell us really clearly that sleep deprivation is linked with a range of negative health outcomes, including depression. In fact, sleep deprivation, as you probably are aware, has been used as a form of torture previously. Okay, so go and get that help. I would also recommend that you take your daughter to the doctor and just have a look and see if there are any medical issues that are having an impact here. The second thing that I want to point out quickly is crying it out is not something that I would encourage ever. Instead of crying it out, here are some of the more obvious answers. The first is sleep hygiene. You want to make sure that the bedroom is dark enough, that it's the right temperature. You might also want to take a look at some white noise. You can download an app that's called White Noise, or you can play one of those relaxation CDs, anything to just keep the focus on noises in the room rather than noises out of the room. You might want to look at the way the routine works, bath, story, hugs, songs. A question that I think is really important is that you've said that her bedtime is 7 p.m, but is she actually tired at 7 p.m? I came across some research when I was looking into your question that suggested that the best time to put children to bed is about 20 minutes before they get tired. When we put kids to bed about 20 minutes before they get tired and we've walked through a nice routine beforehand, they can hop into bed, they can start to relax, we can read them a story and spend some time with them, and they tend to respond really well. If we put them to bed 20 minutes after they're tired, they tend to be irritable. And you and I both know that trying to get anybody to sleep at all who is irritable tends not to work particularly well. Okay, they're the obvious answers. Here are some less obvious answers. First of all, when kids get into my bed, I leave them there and I go and get into their bed. See, I would rather sleep than play let's move the kids from one bed to another. We've had some pretty lousy sleepers over time, but what we've also found is that they do grow out of it. I like to go to bed with my wife. It's really important to me that I go to sleep with my wife. However, at midnight or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., if one of my kids wakes up and wants some comfort, I don't really care what bed I'm sleeping in so long as I'm sleeping. And it's much easier for me to get out of bed, leave my daughter in bed with my wife, and go and sleep in another bed. The big bed's big enough for the two of them. I sleep well enough in their bed, and the problem's solved. So that's something that I think might be a potentially helpful solution. The second thing that I'd argue is don't make a big deal about it. In fact, the less you say and the less you do, the better. Instead, I'd be focused on loving her. I wouldn't be focused on telling her at all that it's important that she sleep in a certain way. Instead, I'd just be focused on making her feel as comfortable and as safe and secure as possible in whatever bed it takes. One more quick pointer. I recommend that you check out Joe Ryan's Baby Bliss. Joe Ryan has written this book and it has made an enormous impact in the way our family deals with sleeping issues, and it works great for kids from newborn right through until the sort of mid-toddler range. It's a little bit more structured than I personally like, so we've adapted it a bit in our family. We don't follow Joe's schedule so much, but we do follow her general rules, and the results that we've had have been simply amazing. Okay, so that's all the questions that I can respond to this week. If you have a question and you'd like some help, just visit happyfamilies.com.au/questions. You can leave me a voice message there, or you can email me your question. That's happyfamilies.com.au/questions. And I'll be back right after this break with my tip of the week.
Toilet training. It's a milestone that parents look forward to. What is the best way to toilet train our children successfully? Dr. Justin Coulson has written a no-mess, no-fuss ebook to help called Toilet Training. Easy as 1, 2, wee. Written for busy parents, you'll whiz through a clear overview of toilet training without getting bogged down in too much detail. At just over 20 pages, the ebook can be digested in under 30 minutes. You'll find direct answers about toilet training based on scientific research, like how to know when your child is ready to toilet train, myths and conspiracies, theories about toilet training, and the most popular toilet training approaches and what science says about them. Some toilet training guides take longer to read than it should take to toilet train a child. This is the fast-flowing alternative to get your kids going at the right time in the right place and the right way. Toilet training. Easy as 1, 2, wee. Available at major online booksellers now or at happyfamilies.com.au.
All right, it's time for my tip of the week. A little while ago, I read a really wonderful, insightful book. It was called Hands-Free Mama by Rachel Stafford. I'll put a link to it in my show notes for you. I've got loads of great ideas from this book to remind me about important ways to connect with my children, and I was grateful for it. A few weeks ago, my wife, Kylie, picked the book up and she started reading, and I started to notice some really subtle changes. The book made a real difference, and I was so impressed. But something Kylie did that she found in the book that I hadn't really picked up on when I read the book, because it was probably too much hassle, was this. Kylie bought a little journal for each of our girls, and she told them that each day they could write a little note to her at the end of the day to share their day in a personal way, talk about things that they wanted to talk about, and Kylie promised that she would write back. So it was kind of like a little pen pal diary. And I can't even begin to tell you how amazing the response has been from the children. We've seen this incredible change in them. After 4 days, one of them wrote to Kylie, "I'm glad we started this whole diary thing. I don't have a reason to keep my problems secret. I feel like such a heavy burden has been taken off my shoulders. It's not every day I got to do this until now. All of my problems are on paper and they're not weighing down my heart." Isn't that beautiful? Now, the diary wasn't set up to be a problem solver. It isn't about saying to the kids that we should be the place that they unload in their diary so we can read about all their problems. In fact, we didn't expect that they were going to be sharing their problems with us at all. And each of the children uses their diary differently, but let me tell you this, they absolutely love it. It is the first thing that they reach for in the morning so that they can see what Mum wrote the night before, and they do not miss a single day of writing back to her. And I also think it's going to be an amazing record for them later in life as well. So my tip of the week is this. Our children respond to our love in different ways. And they show love in different ways. Sometimes it might be through hugs or presents. Other times it might be through spending time together or playing, or maybe just writing in a diary. Could be something that you can try to express your love to your children and to have a better understanding of what's going on in their worlds. If they're over about the age of 5 or 6, they should be able to do that one and get a lot out of it. Well, that's about it for today's podcast. If you have any questions, once again, visit happyfamilies.com.au/questions, and I'll do my best to answer you in an upcoming podcast. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, you can get the entire outline. You can get the resource links in the show notes at happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/2, as in the number 2. And if you think this podcast has been helpful, can I ask you to do this? I'd really appreciate it. I'd be most grateful if you would visit happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/2, as in the number 2. You'll find links to share on Twitter and Facebook so that other people can find out all about the podcast and they can listen in and get the same great tips that you're getting. And I'd be even more thankful if you would rate the podcast on iTunes, because it's your ratings that determine whether or not other people can find this podcast. Every time you rate it, the visibility of the podcast goes up and other people get to find out more about how I can help them to make their families happier. And of course, while you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes as well. That way you'll be able to make sure that you can catch every single episode. Well, that's it for this week. I'll have another podcast ready to go for next week. Until then, please remember, you don't have to be the best parent in the world. You just have to be the best parent in your children's world.